Okay. I am so glad to have Cara Putman here with me today. So I'm going to we're going to be talking about books. We're going to be talking about quarantine because that's what everybody's talking about. And so um, I know that you have some book news that you're going to be sharing, but before we get to that, can you tell us where in the world you are, Cara?
Yeah, so I am in Lafayette, Indiana, which is not nearly as beautiful as where you are, Miss. Let's post photos of the Biltmore all the time. So yeah, I'm just in the heartland, Midwest farm country. And so spring's here, which is nice when I go on my walks, but small town, college, university city. So it feels a little weird right now with everybody back home from the university because we have 45,000 students at Purdue, but it's a small town. It's bigger than a lot of towns in Nebraska where I'm from.
Yeah. Oh, and see, that's so interesting because, my daughter's going to be going to college in the fall.
Yeah, Grove City, right?
Grove City, which has like 2,000 students. So the idea of a college town is very different from what your college town is.
Yeah, it's so true because it's fun because our oldest goes to Purdue, and then our second child is a junior this year. So he's actively looking at universities. And it's so funny because we're like, well, do you want to look at any small schools? And he's like, no, I'm used to Purdue. So he's looking at Purdue and Michigan and Duke and like these big schools. And Chicago keeps sitting and stuff. And he's like, no, that's a small school. I don't want to go to University of Chicago. And I'm like, okay. He's just like, this is what college is supposed to look like.
That's funny. And again, that's where he's grown up. And my kids have grown up with this small town idea. And so they're like, yeah, small school sounds great.
Yeah. Okay. And there are benefits to both. There definitely are. And I've heard such good things about Grove City. So I think Lydia will really love it.
I'm hoping she will. She's super excited. So we'll see.
That's awesome.
In Indiana, things are starting to open up from what I hear. What has been the biggest adjustment for you being in this lockdown time?
So I would say there's two things. Number one, at spring break, the students didn't come back. So we had a week at Purdue to shift our classes from face-to-face to online. And so that has been a big adjustment. My last class had their final yesterday, and it was just like, they were supposed to come to our house because we like to host our students here. And everyone's like, are we going to get to do that in the fall? And I'm like, I hope so. I really hope we can have you over then. Because not seeing my students face to face is just really different. So that's been an adjustment. I don't enjoy online teaching as much. I can do it, but there's something magical that happens when you have a classroom of students and you're just kind of feeding off of each other. And there's a dynamic to education that is really hard to do when it's all kind of asynchronous and there's not that give and take, that back and forth. And so I definitely miss that. The second part has been not having church for, I think this was our 7th or 8th Sunday, where fortunately our church had been doing an online campus, but it's not the same at all. And so really have missed that. But I think a lot of believers have been hungry for that fellowship. There's a reason that Jesus said we were supposed to come together in fellowship, and he told the disciples to stay together in the upper room until the Holy Spirit came, because there's something about when we are together and worshiping and just encouraging each other.
Yeah,
it's harder to do from a distance. How about for you?
Definitely the church thing. It's just the relationship thing. In-person relationship has been the hardest adjustment. We are, like you said, created for relationship. God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are in eternal relationship with one another. And we were created to be in relationship with people, And so that's been hard because like you, I'm a touchy-feely person. And I like to engage with people. And so that's been tough. The online teaching thing, again, that has been quite the adjustment, just like you're saying. I'm doing therapy online, and it's just hard. Our brains are not wired for that type of reading of a social situation. So it makes us even more exhausted. Plus just the underlying anxiety of of everything going on, you know, and I think that's why everybody's tired. We got this,
Yeah.
everyone has this underlying anxiety that the world is not the same and what's going to happen next. And
yeah, and we
so
don't know when it's going to get back to normal. And you and I were talking just a minute ago about how after 9/11, there was this whole new normal in flight that now we don't even think about. I don't enjoy it. And I'm like, oh, come on. Yeah, I'm bringing a bomb, whatever. But, you know, it's how we fly now. And we've just all accepted it. And I'm wondering, that's where my mind goes is, okay, so what's the new normal going to be in 5 years? And in 15 years where, you know, my grandkids are like, well, this is just how life has always been. And no, I don't have grandchildren yet, but in 15 years, I probably will. And so
me either, but there's hope there.
Yeah,
someday.
Exactly. And so those are the kinds of things that my mind goes to. And that's actually, it's exhausting. I was telling my husband, that's what my education has been, is all this what ifing. It's what makes me a good writer, but it can be exhausting in situations like this, because between my MBA and my law degree, all I do is what if, and I can see 50 different options and only 2 of them are good, you know, and it's just like,
that writing brain matching with what you do is probably a little bit scary sometimes.
Yeah, and situations like this just kind of put it on steroids. And so I'm trying to channel that into, let's be research students. Let's look at this.
Okay, all right. So since things are opening up your way, what is one of the things you can't wait to do?
Get out of my house and see people, even if it's from a distance. Literally, because like when it comes to buying stuff, most of what we need, we're either getting at the grocery store, or if we really need something, we can get online. But there's something about walking through Barnes and Noble again. I was going to say going to the movie theater, but the movie theater chain in town had gone into bankruptcy in February. And I found out like yesterday, they're not coming back. So we've got all these wonderfully renovated movie theaters in town that literally aren't going to open again. I'm like, I'm going to have to go see Wonder Woman 84 in Indianapolis. Yay.
You're definitely going to have to see it though.
Oh, are you kidding? That's like one of the depressing things, is that they kicked off Black Widow and Wonder Woman 84 till like the fall. I understand, and I think it's really honorable that they waited instead of releasing it to on demand. But I'm like, I've been waiting for a year for Wonder Woman. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have watched that trailer. I like was writing to the trailer music because I like, it's so cool.
And Steve.
Yeah. Oh, but I can tell you exactly the whole plot thing. I've already got it figured out. And my son is like,
don't tell me.
I'm like, there's only one way they can do this, and it's going to end in heartbreak. But there's only one way they can do it, and I know what it is. And I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. But I'm still going to love it. I'm still going to love every moment.
And we still get to see him again. So
exactly.
That's what I wanted.
So how many heroes have you written based on him?
No, actually none based on him.
Well, I think I know who your next hero is going to be based on.
It might be, really.
I mean, I did have the Captain American hero. That was Chandler.
Captain America. I love him. Now, this is what we need to do then. That's what we need. We need to meet halfway and stay the night somewhere and go watch Black Widow and Wonder Woman together.
That would be so fun.
That would be, you come down from Indiana, I'll come over from Asheville, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle and do that.
About Nashville.
That's right. We can get Krista involved.
Yeah. Nashville's like 5.5 hours for me.
Okay. It's about 5 hours from me.
There you go.
Oh, we might have a plan in the works here. Okay. All right. Okay. Let me get the questions. Okay. Tell us a little bit about your new book.
This one?
That one. I know that one.
Yeah. So Flight Risk actually is, I've kind of created a genre, I guess, legal romantic suspense. And what's really fun about this is Savannah was the mentor character in a series I'd done that's set in Old Town Alexandria, which is where we lived. And so when I was trying to think of a place I'd want to create like a law firm, and nobody wants to read about Lafayette, Indiana, and I didn't want to write about Chicago. So I was like, DC, I love DC, and there's so much you can do with DC, because a law degree, there's so many different directions you can go. It's not going to always be a courtroom drama. In fact, I haven't done a courtroom drama, and I've written 5 books now set in DC and kind of the legal world. But Savannah, this is a standalone, but Savannah was the mentor character. So she's a little older. I mean, she's like 40, but she's not married. And so there was this whole kind of cool dynamic she's not 28 or 29. She's not falling in love for the first or second time. And she's lived more life. And so because she's lived more life, there are more, in some ways, deeply rooted wounds that have to be healed. And then it plays on 9/11, because there's a plane crash, which is based on a real plane crash from the 1980s, that I always thought about literally every time I would take off from National, or when I was driving on the 14th Street Bridge, because my what ifing mind would be like, what if it happened again? What if we don't have enough runway this time? And so it just was kind of playing on a bunch of those things in the creation of Flight Risk. And then the hero is a journalist, and his whole life is focused on truth. But then he writes a story that isn't quite as filled with truth as he thought it was. And it kicks off this whole series of events that just really shakes him to his core. So you've got these 2 people who are, really both committed to finding truth. He's convinced he had it. She knows he's wrong. And it creates all kinds of conflicts. So it was a lot of fun to write.
Yeah. And it's wonderful writing, because I've gotten to read the first half of it and love it. So
yeah, it was one of those that Colleen said it was my best book yet. And I think Colleen Coble has read all of them. She's been my book midwife for so many of my books. So when she was like, oh my gosh, Cara, this was your best ever, it's like a whole nother level, I just went, yay.
And if she says that, you're like, well, yeah, then I have to believe it.
Well, because she would tell me, we've got the kind of relationship where she'd be like, well, it was fine. And I'd be like, that means it wasn't really good, was it? And so for her to say, unputdownable, I loved it, I was like, yay, okay. So
that is awesome. Okay. Yeah, all right. So we have a couple of my street team members who asked some questions for you.
Fun.
Okay. So Rachel Farnsworth Merritt, she said, yes, isn't she wonderful? Super sweet. She said, what's it been like switching genres? Because you have books in several different genres. So what's it been like for you to move to this more legal romantic suspense?
That's such a fun question, because when I started writing in 2005, I really thought this was the space I would operate in, because I am an attorney, and I thought publishers would be like, well, we want you to write legal. And then they didn't. And so I wrote World War II, and I still have this passion for World War II. I actually have a Biltmore story I want to write at some point related.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So there's this really cool little tidbit of history surrounding World War II and the Biltmore. And so.
And the paintings.
Yes, exactly. Don't steal it. Don't steal it. But actually, if we both wrote it, it would be totally different. But
I'm not going to write it. World War II is not my thing.
And so, but I was like, I love that time period. I love the movies and the music and just kind of the culture of that time period. So it was a very natural to slide into that. But I intentionally, unlike some of you, chose to, that's what I'm writing, because if I'm going to write it, I want it to be right. And I knew I didn't have the interest to write lots of different time periods. I wanted to kind of become an area expert in World War II. And then I've written cozy mysteries for Guidepost. But there's something about the romantic suspense that I love. And that's where I always thought I would write. So it's kind of been like coming home. And what I'd really love to do is I've got some ideas for slip time between World War II and current legal suspense type stuff. And that's what I would really, really love to do, is marry my 2 loves. But we'll see. That might come at some point. But
oh, wow.
It's been fun. And I think this summer, because things are a little slower, I may go back and write one of the World War IIs I haven't been able to write, just kind of write it for fun.
Yeah.
But I really do enjoy the complexity of writing these bigger stories. But Stars in the Night and Shadowed by Grace, which I know Rachel's read, had that same big story feel with lots of layers, just set in World War II.
Yep. And and like for me, my era is World War One. I
Yeah.
love that era. So I get this. I get the desire to stick. I want to write about. I want to know well, and I want to stick with
Yes.
that. So
Yeah.
And contemporary, like you do with the legal romantic suspense. So.
And I read almost every time period 1800 forward. I
Mhm.
really enjoy reading a lot of those, but I don't want to become an expert in Regency England. I don't want to become an expert in 1870s Texas. I don't have that deep love, but World War II, oh my word. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm reading a World War II book right now just for fun. I don't know where it went. It was sitting right here. But The Splendid and the Vile, which is about Winston Churchill and World War II. And I mean, that's what I'll read for fun. And so, although I'm reading one right now that you would really like, and see, I want to pull it forward to today. It's Mrs. Sherlock Holmes. And so it's about a
I
woman.
have it. I have that book.
Have you read it?
No.
It is so good. And see, like
What?
you would write about her in her time period and fictionalize it. Whereas
Yes.
I'm reading it and going, oh, I could take this and pull it into today, because a lot of what she was dealing with in the 1900s to 1917, we're still dealing with today. And so I'm like, inspiration for modern characters, whereas you would go, oh, I could do something with this right in her time period.
Yes. 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 Oh,
So
so
good.
fun.
So well
Okay.
written.
All right. So this one is probably one you've had asked a lot. It says, how does your experience in law help you with your writing and your research?
Oh, those are another really great series of questions. I always say I'm the writer I am because of law school. Now, I have read voraciously since I was like 12. I mean, I would read 30 books a month as a, 13, 14, 15. So I was always just inhaling reading, which is one of the best ways you can learn writing, because you figure out what works and what doesn't almost on a subconscious level. But law school taught me to write really fast, really clean. And so that's been very helpful in the years I've written for books. And, and like I've had a couple times where I had a deadline like September 30th, October 30th, and November 15th. And so you have to be able to write just really clean and just fast. But then on the research side, law school also teaches you how to do good, efficient research. And so that has definitely helped. And even before I got into writing kind of the legal suspense, because even then I haven't written that straight courtroom drama yet. But that like this last book that's coming out in January, Lethal Intent, there was this huge legal issue where, I mean, Brandon, we all have known, if you've read The Hidden Justice, you've known what Brandon's story is. And then they changed the law in 2018. And so one of the big things I had to wrestle with is, what do I do now that the law related to group foster homes has completely changed? And talk about beating your head against a wall, but just kept researching. I'm like, I can find this, I can figure it out. And so what I've come up with, I think actually works, but nobody's really doing it yet. Because of course, Virginia isn't coming out with the regulations till July of this year. Awesome. Yeah, that's like a writer's worst nightmare.
Right.
So my author note's going to say, this is the best I could do based on what the law was when I was writing this, and based on talking to people who are doing this.
Oh,
and then you just kind of have to go with it and go, it is fiction.
See, but that's where it comes in handy when you're writing historical, because you already know the history.
Oh my word. It is so true. Because when I was like, they don't even have regulations yet. I can't even go and find the regulation because they haven't propagated them yet. And I just kind of went, what do I do now?
Yeah, right? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know if you've done this, but even with my most recent historical I've written, you're going off of what's available for your research. And there's so much I was writing about the county I grew up in. So there's a lot of talk. Yeah. But when you get into the real research, it's different. And you're having to kind of figure out how much is hearsay and how much is real.
And figuring out when to stop the research.
Yeah,
because
right.
Especially, like, you're probably this way with that 19 teens, as I am with World War II, where I could research and research and research and research and research. And I remember with Stars in the Night, because I was replicating a real event, but because I was adding murder, my agent was like, you can't use the real event because it had Bing Crosby and Laurel and Hardy and just all these A-list Hollywood stars on it. So she's like, you don't want their estate suing you for suggesting that Bing Crosby was committing murder. I was like, good point. So I created a secondary one, but the train then, instead of going north from DC up to Minnesota and back to Hollywood, was then going south. So I'm doing this research on where would Hollywood stars have stayed in Atlanta, what theater would have been opened in Virginia Beach, and doing all this research. And I ended up putting them in a hotel that then in like 1946 had the largest fire disaster in a hotel in US history. And I'm like, oh, rabbit trail. And my husband's like, are you working over there? I'm like, oh, yes. At some point, I might write a movie, write a book related to the largest disaster in a hotel fire type thing. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
I justify my rabbit trails that way too.
Well, and here's what I learned in law school, which has been very helpful, is you hit a point where you start seeing the same research, and that's when I know to stop. Because if I start seeing the same research again and again, I can go, I have researched effectively. There could still be that another tidbit out there, but I'm hitting the kind of the recycle mode where it's just the same things are showing up. And so that's when I know to go, I'm done. I can say I have effectively done my research. And yes, you could always do more, but when I'm seeing the same sources over and over again, I've hit the wall. And so that's when I know to say, okay, I'm done. I've been effective. Now I can write.
That's a great line to draw. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And I think a lot of writers struggle with that because you love the research so much, or you wouldn't be writing that time period.
Exactly. Okay, so we have Rebecca Maney's question. Are you ready?
Oh, cool. Okay.
She says, what sparked your desire to write fiction?
Oh, I think it was reading. And when I was growing up, so many moons ago, Christian fiction was so small. It was, Judy Pella and Michael Phillips redoing George MacDonald and
Grace Livingston Hill.
Yes, the republishing of Grace Livingston Hill, Jeanette Oak, and the Tenays. And that was like it. And so I would walk into the Christian bookstore in our little town, and I'd be like, okay, where's the new books? And he literally he'd see me coming and he would slide the catalog to me and say, okay, Cara, just look at the catalog. This is when stuff's coming, because he knew what I was going to ask. And I was like, they aren't writing fast enough. I can write. Oh, the hubris of the 14-year-old. But that was really it. That was when I was like, okay. And then as a homeschooled student, back when nobody was homeschooling, my mom was like, okay, fine, you can try writing. And she made that my English when I was 14 and 15. And when I was 13 and 14, I actually did, one of my English projects was writing all of those authors and saying, how did you get started? Do you have any advice? And they wrote back. And so I've got several letters from Jeanette Oak, her cute little typewritten stationery, and Sandy Dingler actually read some of my short stories and gave comments on them. And so it was such a thrill to be able to send her, because my sister tracked her down and got a letter from her to me after I was first published. And so to be able to send her that book and go, when you were being kind to this 14, 15-year-old, here's what the result of that is, as now at that time, like a 32, 33-year-old. And so that's kind of how, it really was just this, well, they're not writing fast enough, I can write. And then life happened, I went to college and, all that, but that dream never died.
That is a fantastic story.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's cool.
It is amazing. I love how there's so many different stories about inspiration for writers who eventually do write those stories and get them published, and you get to hear all the different ways. It's beautiful to see how God, initiates this desire within people and then uses all these different dynamics to bring it to fruition. It's just a beautiful thing to see. Yeah,
because then that catalyst when I was 30, I guess it was 32 or 33 in 2005, was meeting Colleen. That was then the catalyst to then be like, okay, now's the time. Because I'd spent years going, okay, God, is this of you? I don't want to keep wasting time and energy and emotion on it if it's not, and if it's not the right time. If it's not you, kill it. If it is you, but it's not now, let me know that. And then I met Colleen, and a year later, I had a contract, and 2 years later the book came out, and 3 years later it won a major award. And that was 2007 the first book came out, and I'm finishing book 35. So it's just been crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so as we get to the end of this,
yeah,
would you please share where they can buy this book and any of your other books they would like to buy with flight risk?
So basically all of my books you can find on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, CBD, Christian book distributors. Baker Book House has all the legal fiction. Most indie, you go to Indie Bound, indie bookstore can get my recent books. Google Play, Kobo, I mean, they're everywhere. And a lot of my World War II, I've put out again as I got the rights back. So really all of these books are available. Go support your small local bookstore. But if you don't have one, then Barnes & Noble or CBD.com, any of those are a great place to find them.
And also, if you guys are in Asheville where I am and you're looking for a bookstore that will be opening, assuming we hit phase 1 on May 9th, Sassafras on Sutton will be opening back up on May 9th, and it's a small indie bookstore, and it carries Cara's books. So,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so definitely think of stopping by there and supporting the local bookstores around you. And I am so glad we got to talk today.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. And thank you to your street team for those questions. That was really fun to be able to answer some of their specific questions too.
Yep, and they'll be glad because they're your readers as well.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. This is
See ya.
All right, bye.